Welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. We're up to episode 208. This is recorded on June 27th, 2012, and we're missing somebody tonight. Yes, fearless leader Ryan Shrout decides that he, in fact, is not going to sleep enough when he dies, and he needs to get up early tomorrow morning, so he's not joining us this evening. So otherwise, I'm Josh Walrath.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
And I'm Alan Malventano.
So you've got the three amigos tonight instead of the quad, which we'll see. Scott was supposed to join us, but felt he had a few other things that he needed to do. But if you want to get a hold of us, you can still call us. We still have a line that you can call on the telephone or on your cell phone, 1-888-38-PC-PER, or you can email us at podcast@pcper.com. Ryan has a couple of Twitter accounts. One's twitter.com/Ryan Shrout. The other is twitter.com/PCPer. If you want to find these podcasts online, then you just need to go to pcper.com/podcast. And with that, it's time to jump into a few reviews. The first one is the new AMD Radeon HD 7970 gigahertz edition. Now, this is probably one of the worst kept secrets of AMD for quite some time. And we knew that a faster clocked version was coming, but we didn't know exactly how fast they would go. And in fact, AMD did throw a little bit of a curveball with this product that we were not so much expecting. First off, as the name implies, the base clock of the product is 1 gigahertz. So the standard is 925 megahertz. The extra 75 megahertz does put it really much a little bit. It's on par with the GTX 680, and in some applications a little bit faster. Now, the curveball that I said that AMD threw here was they added in a turbo functionality that we saw with the NVIDIA product. And this functionality has actually been built into AMD's products for quite some time, but usually it was only used in downclocking the product when it encountered an application like FurMark or something they called kind of, a power virus type application, which would, sometimes burn up the card if you did it, or at least, cause it to reset and do bad things to your system. With this, they do increase the clocks up to 1050 megahertz, and so it's right around the same speed as the GTX 680 in its turbo mode, which is, 1056?
Yep.
When Ryan was looking at this card, he said pretty much in everything he ran it at, it stayed at that 1050 mark. So this is not a redesigned chip. What has been done is that AMD and TSMC have been working to make these a little bit more, better bins, better yields, and this has allowed them to increase the clocks of this product and still stay within the same TDP range. Now, theoretically, that sounds good and all fine, but in the real life, we did not see the same kind of power savings we were expecting to see. So instead of being kind of in the same range in terms of power, we saw these products, eating another 30 watts at the wall. So this is one of the first reference cards that Ryan, was able to get a hold of, and we will eventually see products like, the MSI Lightning version come out with probably faster clocks using these, slightly upgraded chips, which, are binning a little bit better. Same with the Asus products. They'll be coming out, and hopefully we'll see some of the power savings that we were expecting. But overall, it was a very good card. Still had 3 gigs of memory. They did increase the memory speed. It went from 1375 up to 1500, which is the same speed as what we see on the GTX 680. But you also have that 384-bit bus. So you're hitting something like 288 gigabytes per second of bandwidth for this chip, which is just massive. I mean, the card didn't really have any memory bandwidth issues before, and they certainly don't have any now. Heat-wise, the reference cooler, it did the same kind of range as the original that we saw back 6 months ago. I'm trying to think of all the interesting things that this card does, but other than, that turbo mode, the faster clocks, and being able to match and exceed, in most cases, the GTX 680, this was kind of a win for AMD. And they are releasing this out at a time when NVIDIA has finally been able to get supply of their GTX 680 up there, so that anybody can go online and probably order one, go into Best Buy, possibly buy one there if they're absolutely insane. Do you guys have anything to add to this, Jeremy?
Well, it's a high-end win for AMD, because the sort of the thing that I took away from a lot of that performance is, if you're gaming at 1080p or below, the GTX 680 is your man. It's brilliant. It's not a massive win for NVIDIA, but it is generally faster than those cards. As soon as you take it above that into the multi-monitor, which frankly, if you're dropping $600 on a graphics card, you're not gaming on a single monitor. All of a sudden, AMD, probably thanks to the extra memory buffer that it's got in it, but also it could just be the way that AMD has set up this card to be interfacing with massive amounts of memory, that all of a sudden at that point, AMD is pulling ahead. And, a noticeable difference between this card and the reference one that we've already seen coming out. But the nice thing is that because this is, almost every one of these new cards is going to be a golden sample. The Gigahertz edition has already proven that it's going to be able to run a little bit faster than what AMD was originally selling. And you can overclock it from there. I believe Ryan got an extra 100 megahertz out of it. All of a sudden it became noticeably faster. So I think, when you're looking at high-end systems, especially ones that are going to have 2 GPUs in it and multiple monitors, it does make this card a little more interesting. If you're sticking with 1680 by 1050, something like that, NVIDIA does sort of have it, but at the same time, why are you spending that much money on a graphics card? You don't really need it.
And something else to mention about this review is that, if you remember, 6 months ago, the original card was released at $549, and then we saw the GTX 680 come out. Those prices have now slipped to $449 for a 7970. Well, this card is being introduced at $499, so it's $50 cheaper than what we saw 6 months ago with the older product. So I think that's a nice general direction for AMD to be heading with this particular product. So $499 is certainly not a horrific number. I mean, certainly we would love to see the days of $359 high-end cards from AMD, but that's just not the case anymore. Still, it's moving in a good direction, which is down, which is better for consumers. AMD's probably moving a few more parts at that price, and certainly it does not seem like they have any issues in terms of productions. I've heard a few rumors that their chips are a little bit harder to integrate into board designs because of some certain factors in fabrication. But overall, their bins and yields have been more than adequate to provide the industry with as much supply as it has essentially needed. Now, moving along, Ryan was able to bring in Evan Gronk, Gronky? I can't remember.
Gronky, I believe.
Gronky from AMD, and they had a live review of this particular product. I know that they had some issues at the beginning in terms of sound and software, but once they got those things hammered out, they were able to go over the salient features of the product that we just described, and this is something that I think that Ryan is certainly trying to do with more folks in the industry, and it does give us some nice insights into what some of their thinking is, actually meeting some of the people behind the press releases. So it's been a nice addition to reviews if we can get some of these guys directly from the companies to come and tell us about the products. So this is something you probably want to go and take a quick look at and watch for a while and see if you like what you see, I guess. You guys have anything to add to that?
It shows off the good half of our jobs. Talking to the reps, seeing all the new stuff that's coming out. What it doesn't capture is running the same benchmark 87 times in a row, changing one little feature and running it another 87 times. So you get to see the good side of sort of dealing with the hardware industry. Check it out.
Very pleasant indeed. Moving along, Silverstone, the Crown Series CW02 case review. Who ran this one? Heck, I didn't read. I haven't read anything lately. It
was Lee.
Lee actually
yes,
showed up.
The rarely seen Lee. Yeah, he pried himself away from his power supply bench. Yeah, it's been out for a few years.
Yeah.
Hasn't it, Al?
I think so. Or this is just a new, slightly tweaked version of it, but because I know I've seen that form factor before, like that front end of it before. Yeah, that's a nice looking home theater PC case. Wow. It's basically got what? Any kind of media you would want to plug into it in the front, right? Firewire, USB 3, all the SD, CF.
It doesn't have USB 3 yet. There is supposed to be a new model coming out very soon that will. And a new card reader as well.
Oh, there's something that says USB 3. Yeah. It has a couple of SKUs that have USB 3.
Yeah. This particular one didn't.
Oh,
there are a couple people in the comments upset about that.
Okay.
Well, didn't a couple of years ago, Lee started a series?
Don't mention the... Don't mention that.
We are not talking about that. This is verboten.
We'll not talk about the home theater.
Yes. So anyway, Lee took a good look at that. It's something that you should definitely check out if you are in the market
not even
for an HD
not even the home theater PC market. It fits a full ATX board.
Wow, that's a kind of a massive piece of equipment.
It is a fair size, and I mean, so the base footprint is big. You're fitting an ATX in there. It's fairly tall because a lot of the drives are obviously stacked vertically. But the thing is, it'll hold multiple GPUs. This could be also a LAN PC with SLI or Crossfire in it going. It's $350, which might hurt a little bit, but seriously, if you want to sit that in your home theater, have it hooked up to a giant TV, and also be able to run it to a triple monitor display, it seriously could handle it, no problems at all. It's pretty impressive overall.
Yeah,
and it comes with a nice remote.
Lee tried all sorts of different CPU coolers, various large sizes, and they all fit in there just fine. I mean, that is a monster of a case. So you might want to check the shelf height of your entertainment center before you go getting that thing, because it might be too big of too tall of a unit to fit in there.
At least it's all aluminum, so it's pretty light.
Good stuff. Moving along, boy, this podcast certainly is not going to take very long, is it?
Quick week.
Yeah, it kind of was. I didn't get my article out that I really should have, but Ryan, he kept busy. He kept the money flowing in. He reviewed the Intel Core i5 3470 3470. It's an Ivy Bridge model. It's brand new. It has the Intel HD 2500 graphics in there. It's essentially a 3.2 gigahertz Ivy Bridge product. It's got four cores, 4 threads, so it's not hyper-threaded. Essentially, it's 100 megahertz slower than the i5. Is it the i5?
Yeah, i5
3570K. But of course, it is locked. And this product, as you would well imagine, it performs really darn close to that 3770. Well, not the 3770, but the 3570K. And it features,
you're only knocking like 0.2 gigahertz off of the clocks, and what is it? 0.05 gigahertz off the graphics. I mean, it's like less than 5% reduction in the graphics.
Well, the graphics I think were noticeably worse than the 3000.
Oh wait, yeah, because it's not just a slower clock on the graphics. It's a 2500 versus a 4000.
Yeah, so it's a cut down version of the graphics. And it doesn't perform as well. In fact, it performs, I think, worse than the Sandy Bridge HD 3000. which is why they kind of gave it the HD 2500 moniker. And I mean, it just gets its throat slit by AMD's Llano and the upcoming Trinity. But it's not a whole lot of money. Yeah, it's not unlocked. Yeah, it's got cruddy integrated graphics. But overall, it's going to...
It's not a whole lot of money, but if you're... Okay, so what's the cheapest Ivy Bridge motherboard out right now?
I've seen ones for about 150 or so that were decent. I've seen cheaper that weren't.
Okay, so if you want to get a decent Ivy Bridge board, you're already spending like... For one that's like a good one, you're probably spending closer to 200. I don't know. It just seems kind of weird for me to if you're already committed to that, then what? I mean, how much cheaper is this CPU than the next rung up? I guess.
Well, if you're going Core i7, like it's an extra $100, so you're looking at half again the price. You're going from a 204 to about 319. What it does look like to me is a replacement for the 2600K. Because we've had PCI 3.0 compatible boards for quite a while now. So
almost a year.
But we haven't had a chip to put in them. But there was no point in not buying those boards if you could afford it because, hey, it's going to be compliant as soon as the PCI Express 3.0 cards drop, which they have from both sides. So
yeah.
Excuse me. So you've got a motherboard that supports it. You've got a card that supports it, but chances are you're running an old Sandy Bridge processor. Likely, if you're going on the low end, the 2600K. So all of a sudden, you've got a drop-in upgrade that will actually bring a bit of a noticeable upgrade to either any PCI Express SSDs that you wanted to put in that thing, or to your graphics cards. Not a huge benefit yet, but I mean, we're going to see the extra bandwidth pay off in the long run. So it does sort of make sense as a drop-in upgrade for people who, you know, went sort of Ivy Bridge compatible, but ended up with a Sandy Bridge processor because it's been forever since there's been an affordable Ivy Bridge processor. You know, they came out with not necessarily the $1,000 chip high-end, but fairly high-end. And you couldn't really find any i5s or i3s that were worth picking up at all. You had to go with the i7, again, $300, which, you know, is sort of a point where people are all of a sudden, well, maybe I should think about going AMD, or maybe I should go with a previous generation processor at about the same price. So no, I think that there's a bit of hope for this. I think you're really going to want to pair it with a discrete graphics card. I don't think you want to deal with the 2500 from Intel. It just really didn't impress Ryan that much.
Yeah,
this
the
might be
thing
good
that I'm a
for...
little... Oh, go ahead, Alan.
It overclocks decently. It's not an unlocked part, right? But Ryan was able to get like 15%, almost 20% extra out of it just by tweaking a little bit, front side bus up, you know, upping it up a little bit. And then I noticed this though, power consumption, like complete system power consumption. Ivy Bridge chipset and this CPU, 100.1 watts. That's the whole system.
Yeah.
Right? And this is not a
these
shabby CPU, right? As far as CPU part of it, not the GPU, but the CPU part of it is actually a pretty good part. So that's, I mean, wow. That's actually pretty good.
The thing that I'm really disappointed with at Intel is we kind of look back over the last couple of years, and we haven't seen a part like the i5 750 that was released a couple of years ago. It was a sub $200 part, unlocked. You know, it didn't have any bells and whistles to it, but it was just a fast little processor. It was very affordable, and people were able to play with it, do a lot of fun and interesting things. Actually, I don't think it was unlocked. The case came later, but still, this was, well, I guess this is very similar then to the i5 3470. Shucks. I guess I was kind of speaking out of my nether regions.
How are those
anyway.
hemorrhoids, Josh?
Yeah, well, you know, I've got this great pillow that I'm not going to talk about. Moving on. Anything else to add? Nice little processor, decent price. Would like to see something more enthusiast-like at that price. I think the next one up, the first. How much is the i5 3570K? So what, 225, 230?
Sounds
I'm not
about
sure.
right.
We are just tripping all over ourselves in this podcast. I am so proud. I'm doing so well.
3570K, you said?
Yep.
Ryan didn't put that in the,
Yeah,
Put
about
that-
235.
Okay. Yeah, it would be nice to see a sub $200 part from Intel that would be more budget enthusiast based that they can unlock and do interesting things. But, an extra $30 for something like that might be worth it. And can we move along, gentlemen?
moving right along.
Moving right along.
To this extra
Moving
special.
along.
Moving
Well.
along to this extra special message from our advertiser.
We do have an advertiser this week, so
That's the rumor.
all right, and we're back. Ryan tried something a little different, and for Ryan, that's kind of out of the way. He's about as conservative as you can get, and plus he's a ginger. And to show his gingerness, he decided to build a Lano PC blindfolded. Now, we had an interesting email from a fella who was visually impaired, and he had talked to Ryan about, the things that he had done when he owned his own kind of computer shop, and he built computers himself. So I did not get a chance to see this because I was away in Denver, suffocating from all the smoke. What did you guys see? And did either of you watch this?
I know that
I watched some.
It took him a very long time, and yeah, that's pretty much it. It was like, what, an hour 40? Something like
Well,
that.
the video was it took him about an hour and 15 or so to get it done,
Yeah.
which was, a little longer than he thought it would be. But then again, it's just amazing how much you rely on sight. But, it was just great to hear from a reader that says, hey, I'm blind and I build computers for a living. If you want some advice, talk to me and I'll give it to you. And you can definitely watch the video if you haven't seen it. It's well worth it because, as one of the commenters said, Ryan still puts together a system better blindfolded than a lot of people do without the blindfold. And having seen
He's cheating. He's cheating. He's looking under the blindfold. I see it.
So what
Lies.
the little demon on my shoulder sort of half wishes that he used one of those older, really cheap PC cases with no rolled edges.
Mhm.
Oh,
Just so that he
Slash.
would be completely
Yes.
hacked and slashed himself by the time he was done.
And one of the
trying to
old
get-
style heat sinks that actually required a considerable amount of force to get underneath that little
Yes.
tiny lip.
Yeah.
God, is he-
Although the thermal
what is-
paste was
is he
fun.
cleaning thermal paste?
Is he?
Well, guess what?
Oh no, that's what is?
Oh, dear Lord.
there's-
Yes,
no
and that
thermal
would
paste
actually be one of the
Ryan.
highlights right there.
Wow.
Wow.
Did he even
And
get
still
any
better than
thermal
some of the
paste?
jobs
Slap
I've
those
seen.
gyms in. Harder.
At least this part, you've got a guide. You can feel everything and you've got a guide. When you're trying to put this into the case
Yeah.
and find those standoffs, that took quite a while. Because, well, you can never spend enough time scraping the tracings on the back of the motherboard on the standoff posts.
Yeah, I want to know how he did the standoffs because doing that blindfold is going to be.
By feel,
Wow.
and he missed a few, but hey, you don't need them all.
At least he didn't get anywhere there were no holes. That's the important part.
Yeah.
Boy, the innuendo that we could be going on about this is.
And the pictures we've seen.
Yes,
Yeah,
we did
yeah.
see a certain picture that another writer photoshopped of Ryan in a certain position. Pure comedy.
Yeah.
And,
And
moving along.
congratulations to Darren, who won the components. I'm sure he's already heard about it. So if anyone's asking, the contest has been done, the giveaway is done, and it has been disassembled, so he's also going to have to put it together. Up to him, blindfold is optional.
Or not, yeah. Very nice. Well, congratulations, Ryan, on a
There.
job well done. And an hour and 15 minutes of my life that I will never, ever get back. Yeah, open that box. All right, Ryan. Moving along, Asus We know the Republic of Gamers has been a very successful brand for them. A lot of the high-end parts, such as the Crosshair motherboards, some of their Matrix video cards from the past. Well, now we have the Matrix HD 7970 coming very, very soon. This will be a higher clocked product with Uber cooling, two 8-pin power plugs, so it can handle something like 350 watts TDP at max if they really want to push it.
How many slots was that thing taking?
3.
3.
Oh, only 3? Okay, it looked like it might have almost been 4 in that picture.
That's
No,
too much.
wow.
She can't handle it.
Yeah, and it's got the one nice thing that Asus has done that other guys have not is it's got two dual link. No, it's got a single dual link DVI out, but you can toggle a switch and you could either activate that fourth display port and get dual link DVI, or wait, no, yeah,
No.
deactivate the display port, get dual link, activate the display port, get single link. So you can have 6 monitors running off this monstrosity. It's going to be clocked very aggressive. I don't know if we have all of the exact details.
Well, we know it won't be a gigahertz edition, but that's about it.
And that is actually a good call with that toggle, because then if you're somebody that runs dual 30-inch, then the better way to go is actually to use dual link DVI, right? Because then you need otherwise you need some really funky converter and whatever to get full 30-inch resolution.
Which, if Asus is smart, they'll package 1 or 2 of them with this card.
Well, but the idea is that with that toggle, you really don't even need it, right? You can just use your pair of dual link DVIs. And people that run 30-inch LCDs will tend to not have more than 2 of that size on their desk. Hopefully,
heck, more than even 1.
Yeah.
So
we can dream.
Yeah, so this will be a competitor to like the MSI Lightning R7970. This is going to be above and beyond Asus's current direct CU2 models of this particular card. But it's going to be interesting to see what these manufacturers are going to do with Gigahertz Edition chips, and it's going to be very interesting to see how high they will be out of the box. I wonder if we're going to see maybe 1125, 1150. No, Mars is, or is the Ares the...
Oh, sorry, yes, you're right, the Ares. Yeah, the dual GPU.
Yeah.
Dual gigahertz edition, come on.
Oh, geez, that's going to be a meaty
That
chip.
will be 4 slots.
Oh, yeah, and then probably 3 8-pin PCIe connectors.
So
So,
it comes with a jack
a jack.
to keep it from falling off, ripping itself off of the motherboard.
That's true, because you've got 5 pounds of copper hanging off it in the heatsink. Yeah, it's going to be bad news. But, it's interesting that we have not seen any of the dual chip 7900 series yet. There have been rumors that we've seen some prototypes that were not official AMD products, and we still haven't seen these. Then again, the GTX 690 is not exactly, well, it's flying off the shelves, but that's only because there have been so few made. So I don't even know if AMD is going to go after this. I know that they have their dual workstation GPU. I can't remember the Fire Pro 6000 or something like that. But so far, we have not seen that in the consumer space. Maybe AMD is just hoping to get the yields and bins a little bit better, that they can offer such a product. Now, Sandia Laboratories is a rather famous place, and they had a unique cooler that they showed off about a year ago, and now we're finally seeing some of the fruits of that labor, and I believe that they will be, they're licensing out the design to multiple heatsink companies. Do you know much about this, Jeremy? I mean, you had written this up originally, didn't you?
Oh, no, this was Tim. But I did, of course, read it. There's 2 or 3 different unnamed companies that they've sold this design to. But essentially what you're looking at is an impeller cooler. So the heatsink is the fan. Is probably the quickest and easiest way to explain it. What it does is it works on what they're calling hydrodynamic air bearing. They went for a car analogy. I'd go for the hard drive analogy, because the hard drive analogy does the exact same thing. It uses, once it gets up to speed, a little cushion of air appears, which can actually be used essentially as a lubricant. These guys are also using it as a heat exchange medium. So there's a plate which directly contacts your CPU, and is of course the heat source bringing up through the center where cool air is sucked down. Anyone who's watched Storm Chasers or anything about tornadoes sort of knows the idea of how this is working. So you got cool air sucking down the middle, being pushed out to the sides. In theory, this air lubricant heat exchange unit is pulling the air up into the base plate, and the impeller blades are pushing the heat off. The questions I have are, one, we're quite familiar that air is not the greatest heat exchange medium that you've got going. That's why liquid cooling exists.
So here's why that's working. Yep. There's the base plate is sort of just an extension of what we know as like a integrated heat spreader on a CPU,
Yep.
right? It just basically is just spreading out the heat a little bit further. So it goes out to a large radius of, I don't know, it's like whatever the radius of that thing probably is, like 4, maybe 5 inches diameter, right? So you have this relative, I mean, that's a big disk, right? And then you have another one of those plates that's at the bottom, at the base of this bladed assembly that rotates. So when you have that much surface area sitting, both of those surfaces mated that closely to each other, where you just have a hydrodynamic bearing, you're just going to have enormous convection heat transfer between the two.
Yeah, but it's an air bearing, not a liquid one.
Right.
Yeah, no,
right.
well,
But those-
hydrodynamics is air as well.
Yeah,
But
well,
it's
fluid
also-
dynamics is just
Yeah.
complicated.
So the
It-
surfaces
it's really
the surfaces
complicated.
are so close together in this case that the heat transfer is actually going to be, because they're in motion against each
Okay.
other, you're going to have a lot of heat transfer. So that medium is probably not even a problem. Like you probably wouldn't
Yeah.
even see a degree drop from the base plate to the base of the rotating assembly. The
So
key
you
is
expect it to be comparable as if it was directly contacting each other.
it should be.
Metal on metal contact or transference almost.
Yeah, but
Okay.
now getting the heat spread across that base plate, I mean, they're going to have to make that thing out of copper. Their little prototype units were, I don't think they're
Copper?
copper, but well, yeah. I mean, just think of the part of any
Copper.
good heatsink you see that contacts the CPU, right? So the question I have is, this thing's going to be going up against other solutions where we have seen, especially at this past CES, we saw some heatsink solutions that were like 8, 10 heat pipes coming right off of the block that goes right onto the CPU. I mean, you're talking a very small amount of metal for that heat to transfer through before it's already going through phase change out to a enormous, transfer area. So I think this sort of trades off some of that, because it's going to have to take, it's going to be a larger temperature difference from your CPU die all the way out to this, huge plate, right? To actually get that spread out. And then now once it gets there, you're golden. I mean, this thing is going to, like, for a very long time from the looks of it, without getting clogged with dust, which was the other key thing of this whole design, right, is that dust basically just gets slung off the blades, because the entire, heatsink assembly is the thing that's rotating. You don't just have a stationary heatsink like you normally do. So over the long run, I think this one wins. But for short term and for, anybody that maintains their PC and blows dust out every so often, I think those people might be better off with one of those, big V8 looking cooler kind of deals with the, big honking aluminum finned old school kind of thing. I think those are actually going to win out as far as what will get your CPU to the lower temperature. But for the people that want to buy a Dell and then they give it to their grandmother, who then has a house full of pets and never vacuums out or blows dust out of her PC case, this new thing is probably the better way to go there, because it's probably not going to get gummed up as easy.
Yeah, and something
and
else
it
that-
is literally the size of a CD versus something the size of your head.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've seen some massive coolers at CES, Jeremy.
Yes.
You and I both
doing horrible,
and scratched
unspeakable
one
things.
nicely across a
A
black
piano.
grand piano.
Yeah.
But anyway, something else that is when you've got that little tolerance, it's like 0.001.
Oh god, yeah, it's tiny.
It's something really
Yeah, it's a thousandth
tiny.
of an inch, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also spinning. It's compressing that air as well, and so it becomes an even better thermal transport than what it is usually.
Okay.
And so yeah, with the disc also spinning, it's a very interesting 0.001 inch air gap, which is very small.
Yes, it is.
That's about
should
how
know.
short most of my hair is.
But that also raises my other objection.
What?
In all of the papers that I read about this and in all of the demonstrations that I saw, this thing is sitting flat on a table. It is not vertical. And one would suspect that it would actually have some difficulty performing in a stand-up case.
Yeah, it would not work in a stand-up case.
So you are now either a form factor where your CPU sits at the bottom, or you're back to the old style case that sat on top of your desk underneath the monitor. So there could be some limits to this. On the other hand, on a server rack, that is not an issue. And this could actually be showing up in server rooms because I would guess it uses a lot less electricity than a couple of 140 millimeter fans or those really tiny little 2.5U screamers that they're around.
They ended up getting like, what, 2 contracts? They didn't say who the companies were, but they said what they did. And one of them was PCs, but then the other one was high power or high performance LED lighting, which I would imagine would be stuff that goes into projectors.
Yeah.
Right. So you would have you probably have the bulb assembly or whatever the LED power assembly is for a projector shooting down, with the back of that assembly having one of these guys on top of it getting rid of the heat. And in theory, it would work much better than normal because, the projectors, those things normally sound like vacuum cleaners, right? When they're going, the high power ones. So that
and this thing's essentially silent.
Dust. Yeah. So A, it's essentially silent, and B, it's very low maintenance, right? Because most of those projectors are not. You can't just go cracking the thing open to go clean out fan assemblies. That's not normally what happens. Usually, they have to put some kind of a mesh over the outer grill of the thing, assuming that you'll be able to vacuum that thing out on occasion. With this,
and usually there's several.
Yeah, and usually there are several too. So with this, it'd be almost dead silent and much lower maintenance. And the thing that those projectors,
Burke, but move that laptop.
Yeah, that's the other concern is if it's a projector, don't move the projector while it's running. Don't tilt it.
Do not taunt the projector.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a rather
clearly they have some
nice
stuff to work
chunk
with.
of metal spinning at 5,000 RPM, which makes a nice gyroscope.
Yes, also don't assemble that one blind. You will lose fingers.
And you would not want to stick your fingers in that particular fan.
Yeah, that too. Those blades are all metal, and they are all very, very sharp.
And fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That thing would take probably some body parts off, and luckily they wouldn't stick to it, though. They would just fling right off.
Fling right into your video card. Oh, look. The tip of my finger. All right. Dell, they're going against the grain. They're working on offering Ubuntu-based notebooks. Either one of you read this because I did not.
Well, they're designer notebooks, but not in the way that you think. They're web designer notebooks. They took the XPS 14, which has been kicking around for a little while now, and they've essentially want to run a program that they're calling Sputnik, XPS 13. They're running Sputnik, but essentially what they're doing is working with Canonical, the guys that developed Ubuntu, and they're trying to figure out, the best things that a web designer needs to be able to work. So, it's not so much that we're going to be seeing a notebook anytime soon. Right now it's a project. They're going to spend about a year discussing, what should it be able to do? What sort of optimizations do you want to see? What can it actually do right out of the box that's going to work, that isn't going to be bloatware like we're sort of used to with the vast majority of laptops we pick up nowadays. So you've actually got the director of marketing for Dell, Barton George, who is trying to really push this forward. And it's kind of interesting to see this coming from Dell that, owns a large business space. Like they own a large portion of the business contracts of major corporations, both in the server room and on the desktop. So trying to get the Mavericks, the guys that have always been a little different and always want this very specific thing that's going to do everything, and God, don't put Microsoft on it because then I have to program around that. So they want a Linux box, and they want something mobile because they are web developers after all, and they do their best work in Starbucks. So it's going to be interesting to see if this actually comes together into something that Dell can market in a way that, is going to sell. And on the other
Dell,
hand,
of course, shoot themselves in the foot by not offering any Wi-Fi ability with this particular product.
well, you have to build it yourself, and there's a coat hanger that comes with it.
Very
It'll be
nice.
interesting to see.
Alan, any thoughts on that? You're kind of an open source guy.
The other things I would think they'd be doing for this particular platform would just be making sure that all of the various pieces parts are non-proprietary, non-obscure hardware things that, in theory, you should be able to install Ubuntu on this thing, and it should
It's going to come with Ubuntu.
Well, true, but you should be able to reinstall Ubuntu even with it without having to go and dig around for drivers. Like, in other words, all that stuff
Like
should
you
just
do.
be built in, right? They just go with the OEM-ish enough hardware across the whole platform, which is actually, that's nice for whatever you're going to install on it. So
As
some
opposed to
hardware
hunting the
guys...
Dell website for the obscure driver for the laptop that somebody's been carting around for years.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
You might find people that would just end up buying this platform just because they don't want to have to worry about all that obscurity. Like they might even have intention of installing Windows on the thing. Hate to say it, but it might be possible. Whenever a company comes out and says, "Okay, we're going to make something that is going to be this uniform standard, like we're not going to use any weird obscure hardware," yeah, that's like the opposite of the Sony Vaio, right? So it's just people migrate towards that as opposed to the Sony Vaio with its iLink and whatever else and weird renamed things that don't work the same and require crazy drivers that were end-of-lifed 2 Windows versions ago.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I hate those.
Oh, I do it every day.
Yeah. Jeremy feels my pain on that.
People actually buy Sony anymore?
Yeah, and they're proud of it. And then they see the bill to replace like a CD on it. I laugh.
And laugh and laugh. It's better than cats. Can a 12-core ARM cluster hit critical mass? Apparently, Phoronix, if I'm not mistaken, they attempted to build a 12-core ARM-based cluster using, I'm not entirely sure what those platforms are, but I know Jeremy, he posted this, didn't he not?
Yeah, those are Panda boards. Those
But
are
that's
actually the new Panda boards.
Are they
And
sitting on
here
a
you
dish
thought
rack?
that I would be speaking too much today. No, Jeremy is, in fact, the center of our universe tonight. Congratulations.
You know it. Or the center of the dish rack, as it were.
Yeah, that is a dish rack.
Yes, it is. There were cable length problems, apparently, and this is how he and the beer solved it. But what he did is build a 12-core, 30-watt ARM v7. They're Cortex A9s because these are the brand new Panda boards. So instead of being stuck at the old 1 gigahertz, these are 1.2 dual-core Cortex A9s with Power VR graphics, but not what he's going for. This entire test was to look at power, build a low-power system. This actual design that you saw there at peak used 31 watts, absolute top peak. So we've been talking about ARM getting into the server room for a long while. So you're looking at a 12-core machine. It's at peak, chugging away at 31 watts.
So wait,
This
that's
is-
31 watts for all 6 PCBs with all components?
That's everything.
Wow.
Except he did not count the switch because he ended up having to use a switch he didn't want to, which is actively cooled. So, frankly, the thing was probably drawing as much as those 6 boards were. But still, it's an incredibly low amount of power. But how much performance can you get out of it? So that is what he did. Is he sat down, he bought this. It was about $1,200 to put everything together and get it up and running. He ran that against AMD's new Llano. The link is right now missing, but and I can't spell either.
Somebody copied down on the thing and
No,
jacked it again.
the E350 Zacate, as well as running against one of Intel's Atom Z530s, and the key here is the i7 3770K. So he took these through a bunch of different benchmarks, scaled it up to see, do they scale properly, which in the most case they did. But at the end of it, he wants to know performance per watts. And you're not going to believe this, but it was not only performance per watt, the i7 3770K, it was also performance per watt per dollar. It was actually more expensive to set up this little Panda board system that he did than it was to just buy your old high-end Intel system and run it. And well, you would expect that Intel was going to be much more higher performing. It's not a question. You generally expect them to take more wattage to do it. And well, yes, they were above 31 watts. So if you're looking for incredibly low power, absolutely no cooling needed whatsoever, you are still looking at ARM. But if you're just looking pure performance per watt, right now it is the 3770K, which is the leader. Now, a lot of people have complained that, this is the Cortex A9. This is not the new stuff. Well, that is a fair point. We've got the A15 coming out. It's just not available in this form factor. But the thing that we're really missing is the interconnect. In this case, we're looking at it running over a networked business class switch. So it's a gigabit switch, and it's intelligent enough to be able to do traffic shaping. But with Calzetta and them designing servers based with a new interconnect technology using the A15, so that all of a sudden you're no longer limited by the speeds you get over Ethernet. You're now looking at this hugely interconnected, multiplexed system, which we have yet to see. We don't know how it's going to perform, but it's going to be interesting to see how that will stack up against the i7. But hey, way to go, Intel. For right now, you are the performance per watt leader, even against VIA.
Way to go, Intel. There was a little thing that went on today. Google I/O. And they announced a few things.
Didn't they give away
Namely-
glasses there or something?
What?
Didn't they give away glasses there or something?
I don't think they gave them
No.
away. They may have sold them for, $1,300 a pair? But
They
that will
dumped
not
them
be the
out of-
retail price of
They did-
glasses.
They took 5 sets of them and jumped them out of a blimp. Right? And then these guys did the little squirrel skydiving little flappy wing thing, and then they landed on top of the building where all the people were watching the event. And then they did some crazy bike stunts also with the glasses things and a bunch of other rappelling down the side of the building and all this other stuff. And they did it all with everybody simultaneously streaming from Google Glasses, all in a Google Hangout, which I'm sorry to say was one of the coolest things that I've seen in a long time. That these things didn't even drop out. Like, there were literally 4 people skydiving, and you saw all 4 streams from 4 skydivers on
On this
all
hangout.
on a Google Hangout. It's like that was the most insane Google Hangout I think I've ever seen.
Well, it certainly is audacious. They've announced a couple other things. The Nexus 7 tablet is going to be powered by the upcoming Tegra 3 product. This thing is going to be $199 if I am not mistaken. It'll be running Android 4.1, which is what, Jelly Bean?
Jelly Belly, isn't it?
Jelly Bean.
Jelly Bean. No, sorry, it is Jelly Bean.
Jelly Belly. You're going all Doctor Who on me.
You know it.
Jelly babies. Yeah, anyway. That's do you guys know anything about that? Again, I've just been so dropped out for this past week. It's killing
Just the
me.
fact that it's what? It's a 7-inch display, right? 7-inch Android tablet, perfect reader size for $200.
1600 by 7 or something.
Yeah,
It's an odd.
with
it's-
an incredible battery.
Yeah, it's 720p.
No,
1280
sorry,
by
no,
800.
1280 by 800. Sorry.
Yeah.
But if it can play video for 9 hours like they're claiming, I mean that's basically iPad style battery life out of a $200 device. It's less than half the cost of the cheapest iPad.
Oh, and they were smart enough to give it enough local storage that you can do offline voice to text, offline Google Maps, at least to a bit, and something else. I think it was translation, as long as you localized it, which we can do offline, which is a nice step.
I think that's like the perfect device for somebody who wants to play around with an Android device but doesn't want their phone to be necessarily an Android device. Right? They just want to have something that's running Android so they can do all the Google magic stuff.
And with Integra, you can game on it.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be a good gaming platform. I'd see all kinds of kids, parents buying these things for their kids just so they can play Angry Birds on the thing, on Integra. Sure. For $200, why not?
And this is a pretty low-risk operation by Google. I think Asus is actually going to be making the tablets.
Yep.
The bill of materials is not that high. They're going to make a decent amount of margin on each one. And yeah, they're not going actively against the iPad, but they are creating a niche for themselves to get some name recognition. They're going to have some software development on it. And all this is, of course, in conjunction with Android and the phones. Google is taking a very, very aggressive stance against Apple and other competitors in the field. And certainly at the beginning, this will be aimed at the Kindle and the Nook. But I think it's going to eventually, spiral up to be much more than that. We'll see larger versions. And again, they've got, a Siri competitor that they're working on. They have a neural net that can recognize cat faces. The sky's the limit for this company.
They're going after Sonos with their little Nexus Q. It looks like a little globe, but it's a nice little Linux-based an Android-based media streamer with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So hey, why not? Yeah, there's a lot.
And these things are coming out very quickly. This is not, hey, we're announcing it now, you'll see it in a year. You're going to see the Nexus 7 middle of July. You're going to see the Q middle of July.
Middle of July, yeah.
So does a media streamer do the HDMI pass-through? Because I know some of the Google TV products do is this HDMI pass-through.
It has a micro HDMI on it, so draw your own conclusions. I don't know that they definitively said.
Pass-through or not. Some of their devices, I think the Google TV, a lot of the Google TV models have like this. I'm pretty sure it's them.
Well,
they
they
have,
stuck
an
a micro
HDMI
USB
pass-through,
port on it. So as long as you can do a software pass-through, you might be able to just hack it in there. A hardware one, hard to say.
No, the thing I'm talking about is it's more out of convenience. Like you wouldn't have to switch the input on your TV ever. In theory, like you would just have whatever other like your cable box, and then you just pass your cable box through that, and then it goes to your TV. And so like whenever you want to pull up the Google search or Google whatever, it just overlays on top of the stream coming in from like your other box.
I'd be surprised if they didn't include that because that's already fairly well entrenched in what they offer.
Yeah.
They wouldn't take that away.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see because the Q is priced at $299. It's a little high. It's more expensive than the Apple TV products. More expensive than some of the other Google TV stuff that we've seen from other companies.
But it is an Android computer. Like it's not just a media stream. It is a full-on. You'll be able to see how far you can go. I'm sure it'll come with Chrome installed by base. It'll play Angry Birds, that's for sure.
It'll be curious to see how people touch their screen to try to launch those damn birds, though.
Bear in the chat is
it's not working.
Bear in the chat saying it does not have the pass-through and it requires another Android device to control it.
Oh, that's too bad. Yeah, they did say imply it was hackable.
Gonna definitely have to see what this is all about. I only know a few basics about it, but hopefully it'll be worth the money that they are charging. Well, you know what? That's our week in review. And sorry we didn't have more to talk about, but Alan just, He's been enjoying his life without children for a few weeks and hasn't been doing any work whatsoever.
There's still children here. Just one. Actually, I'm working on something, but I'm going to reserve that for my pick.
Well, fine, be that way. Speaking of which, why don't we head along? Ryan would make a pick of the week, but he's not here. Instead, he told us that there will be a Thunderbolt on Windows article coming tomorrow. So you heard it here first. That's his pick, his own article. The guy has an ego so big.
Yeah, in order to max out Thunderbolt, he had to hook up 2 Thunderbolt NAS devices to it. And it was pretty good throughput. He was getting like close to a gig per second out of Thunderbolt on Windows. Pretty good for a very little connector that you just,
I remember when my RAM speeds were about 150 megabytes per second, and I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah.
Of course, that was during the AMD K6 days.
Yep.
You should just use those DIMMs as keychain ornaments.
Pretty much. Jeremy, what is your pick?
Hey, as I mentioned earlier, I am utterly blown away that the 3770K is right now performance per watt leader on the planet versus just about any chip architecture you want to talk about. I'm amazed. Way to go, Intel. And seriously, if you're thinking about building another computer and you do have the money to be able to afford the processor, which if Newegg was behaving right now would tell me is a grand total of $350, it's not a bad investment. It is a really impressive chip, and it's maybe more impressive than you thought it was.
If you're willing to go that new on your CPU, that's probably the best pick for like a good home theater PC. Really.
It'll stick for a while too. I don't think this is going to get trumped, within the next 6 to 8 months. This is going to be around for a little while. How about you, Josh?
Me? Well, I've been building a lot of computers lately for work, and this power supply has been kind of a godsend. I've tried other cheaper ones around the same price range, and I just haven't had a whole lot of luck. No, this is the Corsair Builder version of the 600-watt version 2 power supply. You can get it, I think, for $59 before rebate. These are just really, really solid parts. If you're building stuff for friends who won't be doing a lot of heavy-duty, multiple GPU type gaming, then this is a really nice, quiet, solid power supply for not a whole lot of scratch. It comes with a nice warranty. And Corsair just makes, a really good product when it comes to power supplies. So that's my pick. It's not terribly exciting, but it's a good pick in terms of what you are most likely to use when building a computer for your mom. And I don't mean your mom in a derogatory way.
So many ways I could go, but Ryan's not here to turn red. So what's the point if Ryan's not going to blush?
I know.
All right, so
Alan.
I have been from a tip on Twitter a couple of days ago. I forget the username of who passed it to me. OCZ came out with the firmware. They sort of did 2 builds back to back right away. They did 1.4.1.2 and then 1.4.1.3. You have to use the OCZ Toolbox software, whatever the current version of that is. You can just download that right off of OCZ's download section of their website. If you own a Vertex 4, from all the reports I've seen and from a few of the quick benchmarks I ran just a little bit before this podcast, they improved the write speeds pretty significantly, which is good because that's one of the places where it was sort of lacking compared to other similar 6 gigabit SATA solutions out there. So still more to come on that. I'm considering writing up a short, 2-pager or something like that, just to get the info out there to the masses on just how much better it performs. And if you remember, the Vertex 4 is the SSD that I was initially borderline sort of meh about performance-wise, and where I was, just sort of felt a little bit rushed out the door. And it's good to see the performance getting where it really should be with the firmwares. And another important bonus here is that from this point on, the firmwares are now non-destructive, so you don't have to worry about backing up everything off the drive and putting it all back. You should still back it up before you do something like a firmware update, but you you wouldn't count on losing the data for sure with a destructive update as opposed to this non-destructive update. So that's good on them as well.
And that uses the Marvell controller, doesn't it?
This is Marvell.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's IndyLinks infused, but it's
the
Marvell
IndyLinks. The IndyLinks team does all the firmware work, but they're using Marvell hardware.
How
This
would you
seems
compare and
odd.
contrast the Intel firmware with their what is it? The 520, 510?
Oh, the 520.
Okay. You got
Yeah,
the 510 and the 520. The 510 was Intel modified Marvell,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then the 520 was Intel modified Sandforce.
Sandforce.
Yeah.
So how would you compare it to the 510? Asking the hard questions.
That
Val.
good, eh?
No, the thing is, now that you mention that, I need to go back and make sure that Intel has not released any further updates for the 510. Because it would be unfair for me to make that claim since we looked at the 510 like close to a year ago. Right?
Yeah.
Something like that. It's been a long time. 510 came out a while ago. It had pittered out almost immediately because it was like, it's not Intel. It was the first thing Intel was releasing that was a non-Intel chip. And we were just like, And it was going up against, other 6 gigabit SATA stuff at the time. It just didn't look that great. Even with Intel's little magic that they waved over it. They did a much better job of improving on the firmware for their 520. Compared to, the other stuff out there. The 510 was basically it was performing just as well as just all the other Marvell stuff at the time. So, yeah, this might actually outpace a 510 if Intel has not made any further performance increases.
It's going to be interesting to see.
More to follow. I will be sure to include current firmware 510 results if I put something out there. No, I
Hey,
won't.
it's only 10:30 at night. You can go ahead and just stay up for the next 7 hours.
I got
and do
another. If only you knew how many reviews I pull all-nighters for. Almost all of
only.
them.
that. Anyhow, that's our software hardware picks of the week. Again, if you want to get a hold of us, you can call us at 1-888-38-PC-PER. Email at podcast@pcper.com. You can find these podcasts on a weekly basis at pcper.com/podcast. And again, you can follow Ryan on Twitter at twitter.com/Ryan Trout or twitter.com/PCper. And with that, we have served our penance in hell once again. Without Ryan. Way to go, Ryan. I need a raise. Now,
Oh, hey, QuakeCon's coming up before we go.
QuakeCon is coming up, and apparently we will be there. And I think Ryan is actually going to pitch in some money to get me down there. So if last year I promised to have some drinks with you people at bars around the Dallas area, we will certainly try to do better this next year. And apparently id is going to be announcing something quite interesting, and they're expecting it to fill up very, very quickly. And I don't know what the hell that is, but we've got our reservations. So you guys,
I couldn't possibly guess what.
Quake 12 or
don't know. Something. But anyway.
What are the dates? August
That's
2nd through the 5th, right?
Gosh, I have no
August?
idea. But yeah, it's the first week of August. The hottest damn time of the year in Texas. Bring ice cubes for my head. Gonna need it. But I'm Josh Walrath.
And I'm vastly unimpressed with the new Google Docs. I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
And I'm Alan Malventano.
Have a good night.